I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is the Town Council, November 9th Town Council meeting. I'm Tracy Furman, Mayor of the Town of Kensington. Just a quick announcement. Council member Bridget Hill-Zayat will not be here tonight. She had a death in her family today, and so she will not be joining us. So we have 3 council members present, so we have a quorum, and so we will continue on with tonight's meeting. So we're going to start with a moment of silence. I would like to lift up one of our town residents, Elvie Melagrito from Frederick Place. She took a fall and broke her shoulder, and she's in Suburban Hospital having to have surgery. So I also want to lift up our veterans. Wednesday is Veterans Day, and so want to lift them up as well for their service to our country. Does anybody else have someone to lift up before we have a moment of silence?
I'd just like to add Bridget's family as well.
Yes.
I think it kind of dovetails into what you said, but I'd like to.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay. All right. If there's nobody else, let's go ahead and bow our heads for a moment of silence. Okay, thank you very much. All right, we're going to go move down to the approval of the minutes. Council, you were sent the minutes. I think, Connor, you made a slight change that Susan has already put into the minutes that were sent out with the revised agenda. So I just need a motion, or unless there's another change that is needed. If I can get a motion to approve the October 19th Town Council meeting.
I move that we approve the minutes from the Town Council meeting of October 19th, 2020.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay.
Third.
We'll give Nate all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, staff. I know those were tough minutes too. It was a long meeting and a lot of discussion, so you guys did a great job pulling that together. Thank you. All right, we're going to go down to from the mayor and the town council. Council, you've received, we need to acknowledge the audit committee report. Matt, do you want to highlight anything? You or Susan on that?
We met with the audit committee and to review the FY20 audit. You have their reports. They don't have any concerns, and we're just here to acknowledge receipt of it.
Okay, all right. We've acknowledged it. Thank you very much.
Can I ask a question in that
Sure.
regard? And just when do we expect, or have we already received an indication of the state income tax portion of the revenue for the town?
I think it's the end of the month, isn't it?
Yeah, the
Any
end,
day now, yeah.
Okay.
end of November.
Okay, thank you.
All right, the Summit Avenue extension. Let's see, we had a meeting with people from MCDOT and their team, and that Connor, Nate, and myself and Matt attended that meeting. Connor, did you want to give an update on that? And then
Sure.
Nate, if you want to chime in on your thoughts too.
So we had quite a large group of people from across agencies that helped to give an update on the Summit Avenue extension. And so for reference, for those who may not know, this is a potential project. They are now in phase 2. So they are evaluating what the costs are to actually plan and then construct this project. And what it would be is taking Summit Avenue from Pliers Mill Road north and then slightly east and connecting it over to Maryland 185, which is Connecticut Avenue. And the idea being that it will create somewhat of a bypass for traffic coming from University and Connecticut Avenue southbound in the morning, that are looking to divert kind of west and south, and they can do so along Summit Avenue, relieving some of that traffic along Connecticut Avenue. And then in the evenings, where we have our historic backups around Summit, and then coming across Knowles, and then moving back northbound on Connecticut again, there would be this somewhat of a bypass by the fact that it would have a new route to just continue northbound along Summit Avenue and then connect to Connecticut and University Avenues outside of the town center area, relieving some of the traffic congestion from those major areas. So MCDOT had the lead on this, as it is a project within their capital planning budget, but there were representatives from State Highway Administration, from Park and Planning, obviously ourselves, and what they wanted to do was look through where they are right now in phase 2. They anticipate they will wrap up phase 2 in about the May timeframe of 2021. At that point, they will have a better, fuller, more accurate cost estimate for what it would be to construct this project. And the purpose of the call was just to update us on where they were in both design from a road and traffic movement, pedestrian movement, lights and signaling, as well as kind of how it would connect and overlay with things like the bike master plan. There was some discussion as well about other smaller scale projects that could be layered into this to provide additional relief, things like extending turn lanes, and but those are things that are additive, as we talked about with them. They are not, you know, alternatives to this project. The town during this meeting very vocally, but maybe myself more than I needed to be, but very vocally helped them to understand the importance of the Summit Avenue Extended, in that without it, you know, we have failing intersections now that will just continue to fail to a larger extent into the future. So timeline right now is for that project, as I said, phase 2 is going to wrap in the May-June timeframe. At that point, they would provide the report from the completion of phase 2. They would have a better cost estimate that can then go to the county council. It can then be worked into budget planning for capital projects, at which time, you know, the town would engage with those stakeholders to try and see that the project will remain in the budget and moving forward. They did mention that they are trying to get their report done in the May to June timeframe, because that also kind of dovetails with the county's budgeting timeline and time cycle, so that they can have the report ready in time to inform the upcoming capital programs budget. Nate, anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think you covered it really well. I actually, one point and then a question to you, Connor, and Tracy. I did raise the point that from what they presented, it seemed like for obvious reasons the study was done to relieve congestion, right? But now we have the Thrive Montgomery plan that we're going to be discussing later on tonight, and which is essentially trying to shift away from vehicular mobility, right? Or at least from the automobile. And I raised some questions, and I think the SHA person on the call also raised some questions about just how much that experience of the person who's the walker or the cyclist is being evaluated in this study, and they offered to take a closer look at that in the rest of the study as it's carried out. But my question, Connor, was I had to actually drop off the call shortly after the 3 o'clock hour to go to another meeting. But did they discuss at all the input process for the council to, I guess, is there going to be a public input process from the town? Will they expect, actual feedback from us as a council rather than these briefing sessions? If you could map that out a little bit, I think it would be helpful for everyone.
So they didn't go into it in detail because they don't know yet what it will be, but presumably it will follow what happened with the end of phase 1, which is when their report is ready, they have some of their drawings and schematics ready. At least then it was in person. Now it might be digital, but they had community meetings where they then presented this information to the community. The town, for phase 1, we hosted a number of these sessions at Town Hall, It helps people, give them a chance to see on really large blow-ups what these diagrams, the maps, the overviews look like. They then have the engineers there to go through and answer questions for people. And so my belief is for phase 2, there would be likely something similar. At the very least, there will be, you know, when the document is made public, there will be a public comment period as it will go through the county budgeting process. And
the reason I ask about the timing for that is that sounds great, and I think it's important. But if where I dropped off was right at the point you were describing how it aligns with the budgeting process. So if they want input that may actually end up in some revisions that need to be done to the design, we might want to ask them for it slightly before they finish it earlier on, so it can actually have those changes incorporated before it goes into the budgeting process, right?
Yeah, Matt, any further thoughts you have on it from past?
Because the last thing we want to do is everyone likes it, but then it, you know, with these changes, and then it misses the cycle, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, other than
go ahead, Matt.
No, go ahead, Tracy.
No, I was just saying, one of the things they still need to work on is the intersection there where it joins Connecticut Avenue and University. I think I know, Nate, you had concerns regarding the pedestrian crossing and the bicycles as well. So they've admitted that is a difficult intersection that they're still trying to work out. They also don't show the plug on the plan at Farragut. So we didn't ask them because somebody else from, I think, SHA had already brought it up, that there's no intention of letting people go into Farragut. So they're going to, we've asked them to put that plug on the plan so that shows it's clearly right way in, right way out. So
yeah. And then the only other thing I'll say, and then I'll stop, is in that commenting period, I would suggest that if it is done earlier, and I hope it's done a little earlier so there can actually be some good feedback, because it was just the three of us and we had some ideas, and I think it would be good to open it up in particular, not only to the public, but also to the traffic committee. I think that they would probably be a good set of eyes on this if it hasn't already been considered.
Okay.
Agreed.
So Matt, maybe you can follow up and get kind of a timeline from them so we can make sure that there's an opportunity for community comment as well as our own.
Yeah, and then if they have plans for doing, pardon me, a public meeting, Matt, and if so, presumably likely Zoom, but what that format will be.
At least based on the phase 1 study, I got the sense that there would be the same sort of community engagement that there was for phase 1 and phase 2. So that would be, you know, the community meetings, so yeah.
Okay. Does anybody, any of the council members have any questions? Okay. Anybody from the audience want to ask a question? Joe, you have your hand up. Can somebody unmute Joe?
Thank you, Mayor Furman, and thanks for the rundown there, Council Member Crimmins. Not to get hung up too much on word choices, but I did hear at the outset you referred to this as a potential project, and you know, we've been hearing about this project for a good number of years, and I'm hoping it's more than potential. But maybe could you elaborate on that? And also, sure. Phase 2 is what phase out of how many? I mean, when is the final phase? When's the project going to be built? And also, I was very glad to see and hear the references to pedestrian and cyclist safety. That is really a primary consideration as well. And I think the county has made that pretty clear in some of its presentations to the council in years past. So I was glad to hear that was mentioned as well. But potential, I'm sure it's more than that.
Well, my word choice, Joe, so I'm happy to clarify. When I say potential, it's simply because until I see a shovel in the ground, it's not a real program or a real project. So potential to me, what I meant by that is these capital improvement programs with the county take multiple phases. Phase 1 was just a conceptual what is failing, what potentially could be programs or projects that could alleviate the failure. So they completed that. They devised Summit Avenue Extended. Phase 2 was, okay, now that we know we want to extend from Pliers Mill up to Farragut, where does the road go? Where does it connect? How does Connecticut and University tie in? How does it tie in at Knowles? That's what they're doing now. And that is a fully funded, they will complete phase 2 in May. Each phase 1 had to get separate funding. Phase 2 had to get separate funding. So that went from potential to reality. The reason I say potential is after phase 2, they may come out with a recommendation that says, this is our recommendation. We should complete phase 2, but it still needs funding from the county council. That will be the last remaining hurdle. So that's why it needs to go into the capital programs budget, and then needs to be advocated for with our county council members. And the funding needs to be secured in the budget for this program. And there are several other across the county roadway and infrastructure programs. So we need to, collectively raise our voices in support of this program. So that's why I say potential, is that the funding to take it from the end of phase 2 to the next phase that I understand after phase 2 would be the planning phase. And then the final phase is construction. And those 2 phases are not funded yet.
And do we have any sense as to when ideally that will be? I've heard estimates of 10 years kicked around sometimes, but that was a couple of years ago. So obviously we're closer to shovel in the ground than that, or not. I don't know. What is your sense?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly a couple of years off, because it's going to take a capital planning, capital programs budget. And what we don't know, quite frankly, and we had this discussion with them and they weren't sure yet either, is the budgetary impact of COVID as it gets its way down to MCDOT. So how much money will they actually get compared to what they had budgeted for? And then based on whatever that may be, what are the programs that get approved, and which ones, even if you're not approved, you're just kind of held over, and we just have to keep advocating and move it, if it, each budget year until we can get to approval.
Well, and there's
So
also,
it may take,
no, I'm just gonna say they have to buy property, so it does make it a more expensive project. And then if there's any legal action, let's say the property owner doesn't like what's offered to them, they can take it to court, so that could drag that out too. So
yeah.
It's really hard to give you an exact date of when we would expect shovels in the ground.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, and I will say,
Go ahead, Darren.
just to pile on my view, yeah, like Connor said, it's at least a 3-phase project, where you had phase 1, which is completed, phase 2, which we're in the middle of. And I think people should know that the county executive proposed to pull funding for phase 2 from the budget, and we had to mobilize and get the county council involved, and they did so, I believe, unanimously, to put it back in. So there are competing projects, and we have to be vigilant. And given that this is the only project in the works that increases the capacity of the north-south roadway, I think we should be soliciting the support of surrounding neighborhoods and regions, because this really does offer the only really over a set of immovable train tracks that there is. As Tracy mentioned, the next phase is right-of-way acquisition, and that's the big money. And so in a COVID-related economy, we do have to be concerned about, keeping this as a priority. And so that's why, a lot of us have gone full bore on it. We continue to. I think we do so in a way that recognizes the future of, so when we see the roadway, we're not just talking about a roadway, we're talking about sidewalks and a bike path that really have a potential both to help traffic move through the area, as well as offer a redevelopment proposal opportunity in that section of town. Thank you.
Joe, to your last question, the pedestrian and bicycle movements, Nate made a very good observation to them. And at this stage, the county is looking at feasibility, they're looking at the cost of land acquisition. They're also looking at how to use some of the infrastructure that's there. And they chose in their initial design to maintain some of the median strips and some of the median islands in their design. But Nate pointed out, in our opinion, that makes for a very cumbersome and pedestrian movement to get from one side of Connecticut or University to the other. It's really disjointed. It's a lot of movement. It's a lot of lights. And SHA's engineers, who it's really their roadway, they also concur that it probably needs a better look from a pedestrian standpoint. So SHA had said they will work with MCDOT specifically to look at the tie-ins of the pedestrian sidewalks and crosswalks, and then the bike master plan as it comes down Summit Avenue as well.
In addition, the signaling and the time of the signals and the sequencing and so on. Real quick, one other thing I wanted to add that, Connor, I don't think you said this when you were reporting out. You did ask them about the lane diet too.
Yeah, specifically to University Avenue. So being somebody frequently stuck in traffic up there, Connecticut Avenue has 3 lanes north, 3 lanes south, and they're both heavily used. But at the split, north of Pliers Mill, it continues 3 lanes for Connecticut Avenue and 3 lanes for University, and University just does not have the volume that Connecticut does. And so we talked about whether or not a lane diet, reducing the number of lanes for the University Avenue portion of the split, is something worthy of being reviewed in phase 2. It would reduce the overall number of lanes. It shortens the distance for pedestrians. It adds additional green space. There's more space in the right-of-way for better sidewalks and crosswalks. There were other aspects of the early design too that need to be adjusted. They have some dedicated right turn lanes southbound. The county is trying to move away from dedicated right turn lanes. They're seeing that it creates a safety issue where right turning traffic comes in contact with pedestrian and bike traffic. That's where a lot of their accidents are. So what they're trying to do is reduce the number of dedicated right turn lanes, and they happen to have one along the southbound portion of University Avenue. So right away, they talked about the fact that they don't need that dedicated right turn lane and maybe a lane diet. So they're looking at some of these other things now that we've had the opportunity to comment on them. They're going to roll those into the rest of the phase 2 review as it gets ready for the report in May, June.
Okay. Is there any other questions from the audience before we move on? I'm not seeing any hands, so
Thank you.
we will move on. Okay. Number 3, the 3900 block of Pliers Mill Road. Matt, do you want to address this, please? Just get us started.
Sure. So Montgomery County Department of Transportation approached us over the summer about removing the stop sign at westbound Pliers Mill Road at Summit Avenue following a complaint that they received. Upon review by their engineers, they requested that the stop sign eastbound coming out of Kengar be removed. And after feedback with them back and forth with MCDOT engineers, we proposed the idea to our traffic committee in August, and along with Kengar residents. And you'll notice on the handouts on page 4 that we provided, this was the recommendation that Kengar made, and the traffic committee also recommended this. So the traffic committee's position is to keep the westbound Pliers Mill stop sign and also add a curved line to direct traffic to the right-hand lane of lane of the bridge on the westbound suggestions, add a crosswalk, repaint the stop line perpendicular to the side of the road. If you're heading what would be north on Summit Avenue, they're recommending add a flashing light to the stop sign, paint a stop line close to Pliers Mill Road, and add a line to divide bridge into 2 lanes. And then heading eastbound, which would be coming out of Kengar, heading towards Connecticut, they want to keep the stop sign, get Kengar more involved because they were not involved in the original discussion from MCDOT. And so MCDOT is asking for us to remove the stop sign, which would be heading into Kengar. Our position, at least the traffic committee's position, is They would like that stop sign to remain, so we need to take a position as a town and let MCDOT know. So
I have a quick question.
Sure, go ahead, Nate.
I know you just went through some of the recommendations of the traffic committee, and I was just trying to follow if they were all of the ones that were in Mr. and Mrs. Arai's letter, or were any of those omitted from our
no,
recommendation?
they, the traffic committee recommended Mr. Arai's document in addition to keeping the stop sign westbound.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Darren, do you want to address this at all, or from the traffic
Well, I
committee?
mean, yeah, I mean, it's a difficult issue because I think that the residents of Kengar have one exit out of their neighborhood, and it involves going sort of uphill on Pliers Mill. And as anybody who knows, you know, that north on Summit, right on Pliers Mill, is absolutely congested particularly during rush hour, to the point of several cycles. And the one, you know, solace that the residents of Kengar have had is that they're, with being the only privileged traffic, gives them a fighting chance to get into the crowd on Pliers Mill, east of Summit. So I've known about that for years, just because I live up in that general area. When I heard about the proposal to make it an always stop, I contacted them and I said, we want you guys to know, we want you to be heard. You know, you previously have had a residents association, citizens association that has participated, and it seemed to have fallen by the wayside. And so rather than guessing at what your views are, we would like you to, you know, maybe reconstitute it and give us your views. And so I had a couple of phone calls with them. I think they're in the process of reconstituting a point of contact in the community so that they can be heard. You know, I understand the county don't often have, you know, 2 of 3 ways have to stop and 1 that doesn't. And so given their concerns that are fairly embodied in the letter put forth by the Arise, yeah, I would like to sort of give them the greater voice. I don't think that we in Kensington have strong views on that intersection. They certainly have the view that they would like it to remain as is. I think at a minimum, what I would like to see is that any change to that intersection, you know, whether it's adding stop sign or removing stop signs, would be done in conjunction with the pedestrian improvements that are planned. And seeing, you know, because we've talked about pedestrian difficulties up there too. There aren't sidewalks on the north side of Pliers Mill. There aren't crosswalks. We've identified that. It's half in and half out of the town. So it requires coordination with the county. But if we're going to make their life getting out of Kengar more difficult by supporting the 3-way stop, or by removing the stop sign and making Pliers Mill unrestricted, I would certainly like to feel like we did it in the overall context of addressing pedestrian safety as well.
Well, if anybody's just to clarify, so if they take away the stop sign in front of Voight Plumbing, which makes them stop, if you're going into Kengar, you know, have to stop there or make a left to go onto the Summit Avenue Bridge. So they would still have to yield to somebody coming out of Kengar, correct?
Correct.
That's correct. And we've raised that with them, and you know, their view is that in that part of town, it's a little bit of a no man's land where, yes, they you know, eastbound traffic on Pliers Mill coming out of Kengar technically is privileged, but the the frustration from dealing with backed up traffic and gridlock at that point is so great that the people heading westbound to turn left on down Summit just sort of do so without regard to anybody else.
Okay, I don't disagree with that. I just wanted to clarify. Well, do we have an option not to take a position on this, Matt?
So what Mr. Ho with MCDOT told us was he wanted the position of the town. And you know, if we take the position that we're not going to remove the stop sign, they'll accept it. But they want us to take a position.
Well, Matt, did you get a sense if we took the position that we don't want to remove that stop sign, do you feel like they would put a third stop sign up for eastbound Pliers Mill? Because that's really within their.
I didn't get that impression from them. What they wanted more than anything was for us to remove the westbound stop sign to create a natural flow on Pliers Mill, east and west, as opposed to putting the stop sign eastbound on Kengar, coming out of Kengar.
And I'll say, I mean, look, I'm elected by people within the town, and this is not within the town. But I do feel compelled to advocate for them, because I don't think that the town's interest has any, I don't think we have an interest in that intersection. I don't think it helps us or burdens us by how it's laid out. So my preference would be to leave the intersection as is. And then if the county wants to finish their proposed pedestrian improvements, present that in conjunction with changes to the traffic signalization, the traffic signage, and then we can consider that sort of all together.
Well, it was kind of interesting when they were working on the bridge that a lot of people asked the painters if they were going to paint pedestrian crosswalks. So, which that's not what they were there for, but they really do want the crosswalks. And I think they should have them, because they did come in and they put the ramps on both the east and west side of the Summit Avenue Bridge next to Pliers Mill. So they've now made that more handicapped, but there's still no crosswalks. So I think.
Well, and the other thing that I did hear from the Kengar community, and Matt, this, you know, and for Connor and Nate, just to consider as what our message is, whatever we do right now, I don't think should be sort of prejudice how this intersection is designed after Summit Avenue extension comes through. And the reason I say that is, if Summit Avenue has no stop signs there, and Pliers Mill in both directions has stop signs, that will be, you know, that'll take a bad situation for Kengar and make it 10 times worse, because they will never get out of their community if the north-south traffic on Summit Avenue is unrestricted. So I guess I would add that to, you know, just making sure that whatever we agree to finally doesn't prejudice the layout when Summit Avenue comes.
Well, I heard Darren say that we would like to see their pedestrian improvements before we take down the sign. Is that what I heard you say, Darren?
That would be my view, is that we wait to see the package.
Okay.
I'm
Nate,
supportive
Connor?
of that.
I fully agree. I mean, it's Darren, I think you really well laid out everything and all the concerns, and that, you know, what is the town's interest in this. And, you know, in the period where we're trying to build more bridges with the Kengar community or reestablish them, I mean, hence the mural is one example. I think if we went the other way and didn't take the recommendations of the traffic committee, it just sends a really bad message. And, you know, I think that we should give the pedestrian improvement recommendations a try first before anything. And at the very least, like Darren said, have the Kengar community represented in the decision. And I do think, I'm not quite sure of the last point you're making, Darren, about trying to kind of keep the issues separate between the Summit Avenue Extended and this decision. But at some point, the Kengar community will need to be involved with the Summit Avenue Extended if they haven't been already. And I think we should be encouraging that, whether it's through our processes or through the regular channels of the county. They need to be involved with that because they're going to be directly affected too.
I agree, and I've held several calls with them to highlight what is happening right next door to their community, and to say that they're better heard from as a group rather than to have individuals. And so I think they've taken that to heart, and they're working on sort of re-energizing their resident association. Just to my point about Summit Avenue is that what we do now, we may decide makes sense. That let's say, for example, that we make it a three-way stop, and that the county, it's really the county's decision, but if we made it a three-way stop, if Summit Avenue were to come in and say, well, now that Summit Avenue keeps going, and we look at the projected volume of Summit Avenue versus Pliers Mill, if the county were to say the best engineering design for that intersection is a two-way stop, so only Pliers Mill has to stop and Summit Avenue gets to go through without stopping, I think that getting out of Pliers Mill, getting out of Kengar, particularly during rush hour, will be far worse than it is now. It's with
You're freezing,
almost
Darren.
impossible.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
that
in
help?
that sense, you have to take in consideration, you know, if you're going to
I'm
do
frozen.
that, if you're going to do that at Pliers Mill, then you should do that at, you know, at Howard Avenue. So, you know, because that's a four-way stop there. So I think, unfortunately, on the Summit Avenue extension, you're going to have
Yeah,
to
I'm
have
sorry.
stop signs.
I don't.
Well, hopefully
Lost
Darren will
Darren.
come back.
Yeah.
So oh, now we've lost him.
I think there he is.
I don't know how much at the end you heard, but it was eloquent.
Oh.
Some of your best commentary of the year, Darren.
Tell your son to get off the internet. You're slowing it down.
No, I agree with Darren and Nate. I agree.
I know.
You know, because part of the road is in the town, the county came to us, and they didn't go to Kengar. And I'm glad that we as a town recognize this as a shared intersection and a shared roadway. It's the access point to Kengar, and I'm really glad for Darren and the traffic committee of reaching out to Kengar. From there, they raised up their voices of their concerns and what they would like to see done. It then moved into our traffic committee, you know, so they said, don't put a eastbound stop sign, keep the westbound stop sign, make some improvements. Traffic committee, our town traffic committee concurred with that. And that's the same process we would ask our residents to go through. And I recognize, well, they may not. Darren, you said it well, you know, we get elected by the residents within the town, and they are not within the town. But had they been, and this was a part of the town, and they raised up to say, hey, we're having trouble, you know, we're really nervous about getting a stop sign because we'll never get out of our little neck of the woods, we would tell them to put it through traffic committee would make a recommendation, and we would, you know, typically follow that recommendation. That's what we're doing here. And traffic committee has said, don't put in an eastbound stop sign, keep the westbound stop sign, let them make their pedestrian improvements. We can reevaluate. I think that's a great plan.
Okay. I think that's what I'm hearing that we want to do. Does anybody in the audience would like to make a comment before we move on? Okay. So Matt, can you get back to Mr. Paler and Mr. Ho?
Yeah, I'll reach out to them, let them know that we'll reevaluate it after the pedestrian safety improvements and take it up then.
Okay. Thank you. All right. I had just a small heart attack. I looked up at my clock and it says 9:15, and I realized it had never fallen back. So, oh my gosh. Okay. Number 4 on the second page of the agenda, Development Review Board. Darren, you or Connor are handling this
I'll
one?
let Darren handle this one.
Okay.
All right, what do we
Tracy,
have here?
Can I
This
say
is
something?
sorry?
Can I say something? Because I'm gonna, depending on the order of these, I'm gonna have to recuse myself from the one, right?
Yes, I think from the lay-by-lay lane. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So just to flag that, I'll be going dark.
Okay.
Okay.
For reasons already mentioned in previous council meetings, but I'm happy to restate them if need be.
Okay.
So we're
Kira,
doing that instead of Thrive Montgomery?
what's that? Oh,
Thrive Montgomery seems to be next on the agenda.
not on my agenda.
Yeah,
I have the revised agenda.
It was the newer one, yeah.
Okay. So we want to talk about lay by lane?
The lay-by-lay lane request.
And-
Kira,
okay.
I know your hand is up, but we're on a new subject, and when we get to the time to open it up, you can ask a question. Okay, go ahead, Darren.
All right, so as best I can summarize, the Knowles Manor Senior Housing for traffic to pull off that was connected to the driveway. Less than a month before the planning board approved the project, planning staff came up with an alternative proposal which would have separated the lay-by lane and moved it to the middle of the building and put a bus stop in between the driveway and the lay-by lane. As a result of litigation by some town residents, the applicant agreed to ask the planning board to go to this alternative proposal of a separated lay-by lane. My understanding, State Highway had concerns about that layout, particularly because they felt like the bus stop in the middle of in between the lay-by lane and the driveway presented some pedestrian hazards. So a third option was created, which would involve basically a driveway, some separation, the lay-by lane, and then the bus stop. And that was signed off on as a technical measure by planning staff, but the planning board still needs to approve it. And they've asked for our views on it. My view is that we should support what the professional engineers and planners have proposed. But at the same time, I think we should ask them to consider for that lay-by lane, rather than making it no parking, to provide for 15-minute parking, because I think that would enable residents of the building to, takeout or food delivery and things like that through a lay-by lane that would not be blocking Knowles Avenue traffic.
I mean, I think that was our thinking the whole time we had discussed having a lay-by-lay lane because, to give a place for deliveries to not block Knowles Avenue for those short term. So.
It is, and we do have occasional instances on Knowles Avenue, like for the wine bar, where a beer delivery truck will block a lane on Knowles. And
well, actually, it's usually a county
project.
vehicle. It's a county alcohol vehicle. It's usually what's there.
Oh,
yeah.
Fine. They're still delivering beer.
I know. They're still delivering, but it's always a county vehicle.
In this instance, where we have a new building developed under new, standards, and you've added a pull-off for those vehicles, I think we should be advocating for the use of that lane for deliveries.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not talking about all-day parking. I'm not talking about hour-long parking, but I'm talking about long enough parking for somebody who's delivering a Chinese food order to pull off, run the delivery inside, and then leave. And if the county or state highway were to make it no parking, then the person could not leave their vehicle without risking getting a ticket. So I don't mind supporting the third layout that State Highway has come up with. I would just like to have a caveat be that that the signage be for 15-minute parking.
Okay. Connor, any thoughts?
No, I agree. I mean, in the early concepts of this building years ago, there was no lay-by lane. And, you know, we have heard and we know of the issues along Connecticut Avenue from other buildings that were never required to have any sort of pull-off area. And, you know, it was at the town's urging that we had a lay-by lane included just for what Darren described, to allow immediate short-term, you know, delivery type services to go in, drop it at the front desk, which is the, you know, how they're going to manage the building, and then leave. Things that take a couple of minutes. And so I think having the lay-by lane, but not allowing for that type of short-term 15-minute drop-off, it risks one of two things happening. It risks somebody either getting a ticket, sure, that's an individual risk to that driver, or that they just park in the lane of traffic with their hazards on, which is what we're starting to see on Connecticut Avenue with food delivery drivers. So we have the opportunity right now to try and advocate against that and have, moving the lay-by lane to the center of the building, adjusting the bus stop eastward toward Safeway to create a better pedestrian interchange between the bike master plan and the sidewalk. I think is a great solution.
Okay.
And one thing, just I don't think I made it clear, is that the settlement proposal between the plaintiffs and the developer require the developer to seek no parking in the lay-by lane. And this is an instance where I think that doesn't serve the building well. I don't think it makes the building any better. I think it actually burdens the building. And I don't think it impacts traffic in that area. I would understand making parking along in the 3 travel lanes of Knowles no parking. I think it should be. I think it should be no parking, no standing, no stopping. But I think for the lay-by lane itself, I think we should be advocating for the 15-minute parking.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So it sounds like with the council members that I have left here, that we'll go ahead and we'll send a letter supporting the location and adding that we would like to see a 15-minute delivery type parking opportunity in this space. Correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Does anybody in the audience have a question before we move on? Go ahead. Is that it? Okay. Well, Joe, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Furman. And just a real quick question, and really has to do with this project only in the sense that the council had on its agenda last month, and then 2 months before that, a resolution R07-2020, and it's not on the agenda tonight. I'm just curious as to why, and I thought this might be an opportune moment to raise that question very quickly.
When we ended the discussion last month, we decided that myself and one other council member would meet with the Neighbors for an Improved Kensington and to discuss further maybe changes in what the funds could be used for and some of the settlement agreement. And we have not had an opportunity yet to meet with them. So we're just continuing it, and we'll hopefully bring up the discussion again at the December meeting.
I see. Thank you, Mayor Furman.
You're welcome. Okay.
All right. Go on to the next part of DRB report on. Okay. This is a request by the applicant for the north side of Knowles corner at Summit, 10509 Summit, to repurpose part of a public right-of-way at the end of Kaiser Place as open space. County regulations require that any development provide either, depending on what the proposal or the project is, either public or common open space. And for public open space, the space does not need to be on site. It can be in the vicinity. And so the developer has proposed to us that he take the end of Kaiser Place, which right now is pavement and traffic barricade, and turn that more into a connection between the project at 4,000 Knolls and HOC. It's sort of a park-like setting. He would bear the cost of the improvements to that area. We would retain ownership of it. And in my view, and it's something we talked about in previous meetings, it seems like a fairly win-win situation for both.
Okay, before we go further, I just want to clarify on the agenda. It says 10509 Summit Avenue, the flats at Knoll Station. This is actually the townhouses at 4,000 Knolls. So I just want the description of what we're discussing is correct, but the address is.
Just to clarify, so
is that technically their location?
they are requesting, they don't need open space for the townhouse project.
Okay.
That project has been approved preliminary. What the applicant is trying to do is use the right-of-way improvements at the west end of Kaiser Place as part of the calculation for the flats project.
Okay, it's just confusing that we're not stating that it's for actually, okay.
Because it would actually be for the flats project on Summit Avenue. So this was under the recommendation of Montgomery Planning that the applicant requests this.
Right.
So.
Okay, I'm sorry. I know you mentioned that to me and I forgot about that. Okay.
Why was the county recommending they request it if they don't need it to meet
the developer needs to provide the open space. It's a matter of where. And
okay.
this,
I misunderstood the documents that we reviewed them, because I thought it said that he didn't actually need it for this, but the county was still suggesting.
Yeah, he didn't need it for the townhouse project. He does need it though for the project across the street. Right.
And the alternative would be he gets it just, what is the alternative actually?
He'll find it somewhere else. We viewed the end of Kaiser Place as, I mean, it's sort of a weird dead end road. It's ugly. It's got, it used to be a chain, and now I think it's some sort of guardrail.
It's got a rail and a box. It's got a planter box, and we've added a asphalt sidewalk, but there's quite a bit of asphalt street. It's a road to nowhere. It's a pedestrian, any pedestrian improvements you could make to it.
Right.
I mean, really.
And we want to make sure that, and this came up during the discussion of the townhouses, that we don't want the townhouse residents to feel that area is their backyard. We still want to make the Kaiser Place a through pedestrian route for the general community. And so I think
it gets a lot of foot traffic from people in Kensington Estates. It gets a lot of foot traffic from
my father.
Teenage kids, yeah, your parents, but the teenagers that walk between Parkwood, Kensington Estates, all go that way, headed up to the Kensington Shopping Center and Pliable and all those great places now to eat.
Yeah.
So we just need to send, we need, if everybody's on board with it, we just need to send a letter to planning that lets them know that we're on board with it. They obviously don't want to take Tom's word for it and the applicant's word for it. They would just like something from us that says we are agreeable to, we'll keep ownership, but the applicant will, at his expense, redevelop and maintain the end of that road in a park-like setting. I don't know, Matt, what your views are. My suggestion on the language was that we embody this in some sort of declaration of covenants, which we anticipate we're going to need for other aspects of the 10509 Summit Avenue project. So it will be recorded, it will be binding between us and the project.
Yeah, I agree to that. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions from the council?
My only other question, and sorry, Connor, I don't know if you had others, but is will we get, since we're going to be, if we're going to still maintain it and own it, will we have a say in what the design looks like? Would it change any of the design of the current plans, how we've seen that presented to us for the townhomes, or will they just do it and we kind of take what they give us?
No, we would have a say, and that's what we would put into the declaration of covenants. I mean, I want to make sure I clarify. We would still own it. He would maintain it, but he would maintain it. He would maintain it under the parameters that we set. So if we talk about, 3 trees and pavers and whatever, it would be, he'd be maintaining that.
Okay.
And this, in some ways, you have to proceed on good faith with this project because if the 10509 project doesn't happen, then this won't happen. So in the context of negotiating with him over the 10509 project, we would be coming up with a design of what we would like this area to look like. It's not a huge area. Matt, I don't remember the exact square footage, but I think it's like 900 square feet.
On the plans, it says 1370.
Yeah, but that part of that is HOC property.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as what our town right of way, I think it's below 1,000 square feet.
Nate, did you have any other questions?
No, thank you, Darren. That was very helpful.
Okay. Yeah. So after looking at this through the townhouse project and now this project, I mean, I didn't have interest in giving up town land. So when it came back the second time as town maintains the ownership of the land, the developer will pay the cost to redevelop it from a asphalt landscape into a green space to our specifications and then maintain it as such as well. I find this very attractive to the town. It creates a little pocket park that isn't just benefiting the townhouses. Really, I mean, my kids practice at HOC, and on hot days, there's really nowhere to sit where you can still see the field and see your kids. So you end up sitting in your car. And this would provide a great little spot where benches and shade trees, it's pulling that space back from Summit Avenue, improvements to the sidewalk and pulling and creating a green buffer. So it would be potentially the start of, helping find a better way to lay out the pedestrian walkway on Summit Avenue. This would set that first couple of pavers that, we might be able to reposition that whole sidewalk. And so for that reason, I mean, and the other reality is the west end of Kaiser Place doesn't get used for anything largely more than parking a car here or there. And so I think it is a better use to our community to turn it into a pocket park at a developer's expense. We maintain and the ownership of the property, then just let it sit there as asphalt.
Well, and I don't want to minimize the size. It is only, I think it's less than 1,000 square feet. But the 4,000 Knolls project, the townhouse project, also has to design and maintain the corner that's right above that. So the 2 adjacent parcels. So 4,000 Knolls has to design and maintain that corner, including, the Welcome to Town of Kensington sign and things like that. And so what we are anticipating is that we would have one cohesive project. Even though it's prompted by 2 different developments, we're expecting the corner and this Commerce's Pocket Park to be sort of unified.
Any other comments from the council? Are there any comments from the audience? Joe, where are you?
Right here, Mayor Furman. Thank you very much. I'm just curious as to how the town is going to make sure the developer will maintain this open space in years ahead. I mean, what's the mechanism to be sure that this will happen, that it'll be maintained by the developer, and that it won't become some, dumping ground for refuse and so forth in 10, 20 years?
Darren, do you want the covenant? Yeah, go ahead and.
Yeah, no, that's where you use the declaration of covenants. If all we did was put this in the county's bucket, and then we have to call up the county to have it enforced if we feel like, you know, grass is being cut or the pavers are you know, not staying where they belong. By putting it in a recorded declaration of covenants, the town has the enforcement authority.
So does that mean then that the town could impose penalties, fines or something on the developer or his successor? Is that what the covenant is intended to do or likely to do?
Well, clearly it would be binding on both the applicant and the successor. We wouldn't want the enforceability to be erased if you were to sell the project. And so how it would be enforced, I mean, you know, in some ways, with a project like this, where, you know, he has to maintain the area right above it, I think there's a natural inclination to maintain the adjacent area. You know, homeowners are paying for it. That's part of their monthly maintenance fees. So I don't think there's an incentive to go cheap on it. But yes, ultimately we would have the ability to threaten him, take him to court, actually take him to court. But with an undertaking this small, of 900 square feet, I don't anticipate that we would be taking somebody to court.
And who in the town would be looking after this? Is this a town crew responsibility, perhaps? Who's keeping tabs on this for the town?
I mean, just as much as he mows the grass for whoever his maintenance people will mow the grass in the front yards of these towns, they will also be, you know, replacing the paver sand between the pavers or painting the benches on the west side of the property. It's his responsibility to maintain, and that's what would be enshrined in the Declaration of Covenants.
Very good. The only reason I'm going on about this is we've seen often cases in which great sounding decisions are made, but the enforcement is not there. And so I'm just wondering what kind of hammer is there at the end of this.
Well, I agree with you. And this is something in some ways, you know, the Development Review Board has been a little bit of a learning curve. We learned that what they say in the meetings doesn't mean much unless there is an enforcement mechanism. And that's where we've, you know, so, you know, for example, one of the community meetings, the 4,000 Knolls project agreed to make the roofs, you know, suitable for solar. And we, for that sort of an undertaking, you know, in some ways you have to decide how big it is. Do you want to create a declaration of covenants just for that? But if you want it truly enforceable, like we do, and I say for the 10509 Summit Avenue project, I anticipate much more significant undertakings and promises by the developer regarding public parking if we get there, and I hope we do. So this to me is just a natural add-on to other undertakings for this person, and they need to be enforceable, and they need to be enforceable not at the county level but at the town level, so that we can decide to prioritize it and decide to enforce it.
Thank you, Mayor Furman.
Does anybody else have a question regarding this topic? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands, so we're going to write a letter to Darren. Do you want to craft a letter? I know you started one. Do you want to regarding this for planning?
Sure.
Okay. If you want to circulate that to the council.
Yep, we'll do.
I think they're looking for that rather quickly, so. Okay.
Well, it's done, unless.
Well, send it out again, just in case people weren't reading that as a, this is actually not just a suggestion anymore, now that we've agreed that we're gonna send this, okay?
Okay.
All right, thank you. And Matt will probably want to do some edits on it and that's.
I'll put it on letterhead and then send it back out. And
Okay, that's good. All right, thank you. Is that going to just to Troy?
This is going to Kerry Sanders and Patrick Butler.
Okay. Okay. All right. Let's keep on moving down. We're going to go down to number 5, the Thrive Montgomery 2050. Connor, you and Matt were on a phone conference with the other municipalities in Montgomery County, if you want to bring us up to date, and they would like us to join them in a letter to Casey Anderson, the chair of Park and Planning.
Correct. So just to give some context, Thrive Montgomery 2050 is a forward-looking planning document coming from the Department of Parks and Planning. It is the framework for how the county wants to look at planning and development over the next 30 years. It would be, in theory, the planning document that any rewrites to sector or master plans, they would now write against this plan. The county's last plan, I believe, was might have been like 1964. So it's an update to that plan, but it looks to address things such as how people move around, pedestrian-friendly communities, concepts of connectedness, diversifying economies, affordable and attainable housing. So there's several tenets within this plan. The plan itself right now in draft, the working draft is 75 pages. To give you an idea, it's quite lengthy, quite detailed, but there's still several parts of the plan that I had, after reading it, went to Matt Hoffman, our town manager, to say, I have some deep concerns here. Do you know what is the process of this? And I went to Mayor Tracy, and the mayor acknowledged how planning rolled it out last year through what they call these Thrive Montgomery events, largely setting up tables at public events. It did not make it through our municipality or other municipalities as community meetings as often is done. And then obviously the pandemic hit, and any type of in-person get-togethers were lost. And the county continued to try and do some things digitally, but they were also trying to figure out their digital world. Well, in that time, the draft plan has made its way up to where they want to start working it through planning and get ready for it to go in front of the county council. I shared my concerns with Matt. Matt acknowledged that other municipalities were also having concerns that he knew about through his ongoing meetings with the Down County town managers. So began discussion with them. So that brought us to the meeting last week where representatives from more or less all of the, what I call, are called the Down County municipalities. So that's everything in the lower part of Montgomery County, as well as numerous homeowners associations, residents associations were all present. I mean, there were dozens and dozens of people on this. And we coalesced around several themes and topic areas where we thought there were some blind spots in Thrive Montgomery 2050, areas where more detail was needed, more specificity was needed, specific metrics were needed, additional areas that we thought were completely overlooked, especially areas Matt and I discussed with the group, a complete lack of any commentary around historic communities, of which Kensington has a large historic community. It did not talk at all about how the plans for missing middle housing and other things would come in and abut our historic community. So what has come out of that is a letter, and it is equally as long. It's about 14 pages that is drafted, and they're asking for signature by each of those interested municipalities and community organizations from their, the head of those organizations. So in our case, this would be Mayor Furman. But the letter lays out the areas of concern that we have, that not enough focus has been put on economic development, that too much focus has been put on the concept of 15-minute living, this idea that you should be able to walk or ride your bike and do everything you need to do within 15 minutes of your house, because the county isn't built that way, and because they are fairly vague in what the definition of 15 minutes is. So with that preamble, what I'd say is, after reviewing the draft letter, which I thought was extremely well written, and condensed as best it could all of the areas of concern, because there were many that this group had. I only had a few other comments that I suggested Mayor Tracy send back to the group for consideration. Final draft they're looking for is this Thursday, because they want to get it into the planning board by next week. And it was simply to further define some of the areas around 15-minute. I think there's a gap in there where we talk about 15-minute walks or bike rides or car rides, but we also forget the concept of 15-minute transit living, the part of the population that comes and goes from their house to shopping and services and back all by transit. There were a couple other minor suggestions in here as well to talk about sidewalks, right? If we are going to be shifting the county towards both multimodal transportation, but a greater emphasis on walking and cycling, there are large parts of the county, even within the town or nearby the town, without adequate sidewalks, either missing sidewalks from one or both sides of the street, sidewalks that are unsafe, or sidewalks that are just clearly inadequate. And as part of our transportation infrastructure, need to get more emphasis. And then lastly, one of the other things that we don't talk about is I mentioned in here is just how the drive, pun intended, of the county towards fewer vehicles, people taking less cars, walking trips, how we're seeing the evolution of the post-COVID economy where more people are having services delivered, not just food deliveries as we've been used to now for a couple of decades, but groceries, medicine, get in our car, make 4 or 5 stops, and then return home. And now for many households, all of those things are coming by way of delivery, which, going back to our conversation on the lay-by-lane. And that gets into, discussions about how well our transportation infrastructure grid is built for a post-COVID economy. So what I recommend here is these are just minor changes. If nobody has any concern with them, or unless anybody else has anything else they want to add, I recommend that Tracy take our minor edits and put them back to, I believe it's Todd Hoffman, who's the point of contact for Down County, for consideration to be included in the memo on Thursday.
I read the document. I don't recall, which is quite long. I don't recall seeing anything specific to the historic. Is there
so
something in there?
it is, yeah, there's one section. It is, I'll show you. There was nothing in the original document or our letter back. So in Thrive Montgomery, there is nothing. There's nothing in Thrive Montgomery about historic districts. And our concern and the concern that Matt and I vocalized was there's a lot of talk about housing, new housing types, what they call this missing middle housing. So that is, adding duplexes and triplexes and little courtyards of housing, but they talk about doing it as infill development throughout the county, especially in areas within a half a mile of rail, which includes MARC, so that's the town of Kensington, and to infill areas where, kind of what the ADUs are currently proposing, that you can start to put more housing density into single family home areas. And for the town of Kensington, in our historic district, being a historic homeowner, but having read all of those documents recently, the design of our historic district is what's called a garden design. The intent was that homes were situated on large lots, but situated specifically by design on a portion of the lot so as to create side gardens. And gardens connect to the front of the property and the sidewalk so that you have a house, essentially a whole lot that's a yard and garden, a house, a whole lot that's a yard and garden. And Thrive Montgomery, as I read it, seemed to advocate for infill development of this missing middle housing pretty much anywhere where there's, a sufficient
yeah,
lot
they didn't
size.
specifically address the historic preservation, which I now see, because I was reading it on the computer. I see it as number 8 on page 5. So I do see
Right.
it. Yeah.
So we've asked that the document be revised, Thrive Montgomery be revised to include specific language stating that it will adhere to all of the current historic preservation laws and rules that have to do with setbacks and lots and things like that.
Okay. Well, I think you guys have done a great job. Is sending it to Casey Anderson, is that, I mean, because I know the council is going, I mean, the council approves it, but starting with Casey Anderson is the right person?
Yeah, the intent right now is the request initially from the group was to have them pull the plan all together for consideration, that they thought it shouldn't move forward yet because of the impact of COVID.
Mhm.
Time has gone by, and I think what they've come to realize is the plan is, you know, the parking planning is ready to move this forward. But what we would like to see is before they do so, that they address some of these shortcomings and make adjustments to the plan. So it's addressed to Casey Anderson in an effort to ask him to have his staff look at this letter, make considerations around these items, and make revisions to the plan prior to sending that plan to the county council.
Okay. Darren,
So-
you or Nate have any comments?
No, I think it's a good letter. I think it's a good proposal for, you know, future planning purposes. You know, it'll be interesting to see. There's a general saying of, you know, the general's plans for battle survive the first shot, don't survive the first shot. And so, you know, COVID has completely upset transportation planning, traffic, and all that stuff. And, you know, I think we're going to be on track to shift away from cars. And so I think the plan is a good thing. We'll just have to figure out what the short-term impact is.
Okay. Nate, any comments?
No, I just wanted to commend Connor. I think that was a really good description of the letter, which I was kind of laughing when you said the plan was long, but the letter was almost as long, and it was to read through. And I know that I read more detail the previous version you sent, but I did scan through before the meeting the one you shared, and I think it lays it out really nicely. I think there are one or two things that I think are worth noting that came up as a potential criticism of the plan as it currently is, that are relevant to our community in particular. That the first is, well, not just our community, but the complex overlay of plans and where this informs other plans or preempts certain planning processes like the sector plan, the bike master plan, even, you know, the MCPS school cluster analysis and boundaries. And the vision they have for 2050 is a drastically, you know, I would say very, very, one could say quite a radical shift in the way that we have our development and design. So some of the financial implications, the budgetary implications for this decentralized model could be quite drastic. So I think that's another concern that's picked up really well in the letter, just trying to cut through really where does this come in, what will it mean for the other planning processes and the budgets and the finances. And then the other thing I wanted to say is that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Kensington is cited as an example for the suburban, what is it called?
Complete community.
And I'm just curious if we're thinking about our area as a suburban complete community, do you get a sense from reviewing all the documents and the discussions that this is where they expect us to stay? Because many could say that we're actually getting into more of an urban community with the development, especially in our center downtown core. So is there an idea of transition for communities like ours, or do they want us to stay exactly as we are? You know, I guess this concept of defining what is a suburban versus urban versus rural was another issue that you took with or the authors of the letter took to express.
And that was a deep area of concern, that they kept the phrase complete community is this sense that you can get every service and shopping need and community you need from this 15-minute diameter. And that's a 15-minute walk, 15-minute bike ride, 15-minute car ride. And there were two things that we pointed out very earnestly. One is a 15-minute walk, a 15-minute bike ride, and a 15-minute car ride are three drastically different things. I mean, the radii of those things are hugely different. So when they have this tagline of 15-minute living and they keep saying, well, you know, complete community is you can get everything you need within 15 minutes, but they keep interchanging 15 minutes of walk, ride, or drive. Our point is that that shifts very drastically what the definition of a complete community is. Nate, to your point, they cited Kensington as the only jurisdiction that they, at least in this draft format, that they would deem a complete community of the suburban type. But they don't define what it means to be a complete community for urban versus suburban versus rural, right? They don't list like, hey, there are some trade-offs when you get out into more rural communities. There are some things that maybe can't fit in that 15. They don't do that. And that's one of those things we've asked them to do, is to define that. You know, for the town of Kensington, or just Kensington, the greater Kensington area, I mean, it starts around the town of Kensington because we have the commercial corridor. But, you know, okay, you've got a grocery store, you've got many shops and restaurants and services all within our commercial corridor. We have a library, right? We've got the children's library, and then we've got the Kensington Library down Summit. Schools. Well, now you're really pushing that concept of 15-minute living, right? I can't walk from my house to KP in 15 minutes. Nate, you're faster than I am. You're closer than I am. You might be able to pull it off, but I can't. And I certainly couldn't get to North Bethesda Middle School or Walter Johnson. We don't have a community center. I couldn't get to the Wheaton Community Center either. That would be the closest of those. And so these are areas where, you know, our point was, you need to be specific. It's a great tagline. It's a great, this concept of 15-minute living, but it kind of falls apart as they went through and tried to define what it was. And they did not give sufficient examples of suburban, urban, and rural, and what the metrics are to be considered those, because that was the other thing. We need to know what those goalposts are. What are the metrics that tell you you have a change, you know, your community is part of a complete community, so that you can know, okay, we're not quite there, and here's what we need to do to get there. And then likewise, you can know, okay, we've attained it. We're you know, we can be defined as a complete community. So these are the areas where we're just saying it's a good draft. It's a good first draft of a visionary plan, but there wasn't a lot of direct input from municipalities. I think part of that is due to COVID, and things got disrupted. So they didn't get a lot of voices directly from municipalities and these residential associations. And now we're taking our chance now to provide that input and feedback to say, it's a good first draft, but we think you missed on a couple of parts.
Okay. So it sounds like we're all in support of signing on to the letter. Okay. Does anybody in the audience have a question regarding Thrive 2050? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands. So we'll plan to sign on to, okay, and let him know that we'll plan to sign on to the letter. Okay. All right, thank you. All right, let's go down to number 6, the Town Elections Subcommittee. I know Sue Ellen has been directed to put together an ordinance for the next meeting in December. So that will be an introduction. Then we will have a hearing in January, and we will approve it in February. I think we're in good shape with that. Does anybody have any additional questions, comments?
Nope.
Okay. Anybody in the audience understand or have a question? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands, so we'll.
If anybody in the audience wants to see the gist of what we're proposing, if you just go back to the November meeting, I'm sorry, the October meeting, and look at the materials that were distributed in that, it's on our website under town meetings.
There's a red line version, I believe, right?
Right. and so we don't want to hide the ball on anything or wait. I mean, to the extent you want to be involved and thinking about it, you can start now. The only addition from what the red line version contains is apparently we need a tie-breaking mechanism in case somebody gets the same number of votes as somebody else, and so that'll be introduced as well.
All right. Okay. All right. Moving on. Nate, number 7.
Great. Yeah. So as you know, we have a working group for pedestrian, bicycling, access and safety. We've been meeting monthly. We met in October after our last council meeting, and I was going to provide just a quick update on the happenings around that. So we had the meeting. It was a good meeting, but we did a subsequent kind of meeting of a couple of the other members of the working group members to do a walk audit training for the working group. So there were 6 of us who met on Halloween, like 11 o'clock, noon or so, and spent about an hour or two to actually do a sample walk audit. And for those of you that aren't familiar with the concept, it's basically a stock taking or an assessment of the current or the status quo of how the conditions are, the pedestrian experience, the bicycling experience in a given block. And you go section by section and audit it and come up with, we have a rating system for each block for the categories, and we're entering them into a database. And there's also, if there's a significant recommendation or a gap or anything that we want to kind of make sure that's flagged, we're inputting that into a spreadsheet. So we did the training. It was, I think it went really well. It was myself, Anne-Marie Turner, who's the co-chair of the working group, Jamie Keller, Alan Simon, David Romeo, and Todd Frankel. So we did it, and the plan is to carry these out with the working group over the next month or two, so we can canvass the entire town and take stock. And our next meeting is going to be held in a couple of days on the 12th of November, where we'll revisit that, kind of assign who's doing which part of the town. Anne-Marie already created a GIS map of block by blocks, and we have a spreadsheet for tracking all of that, so we can have it in digestible format. So the idea is probably in the January meeting, we'd want to report back to council with some of the findings from that, and maybe have a little bit more robust discussion on those aspects. I don't think there's anything else to add at this point, other than to note that Jeff Griffith is on. I see him online here, and he sent an email to us about the something that related to this working group, and also I think also the traffic committee. So I think we should probably, I'd recommend maybe opening it up to see if there are any questions, but I'm sure Jeff might want to say something.
Okay.
And I'm happy to describe the request that came in too.
Okay, Council, do you have any questions for Nate before we move on to opening it up to the audience, including Jeff? Jeff, did you want to?
Just real quick, just kudos, Nate. I looked over all those things. They look great. And then once you capture the photos and everything too, I think it's going to be wonderful. Good job.
Thanks. And thanks for that recommendation too about the photos. It's a really great idea.
Yeah.
This is only tangentially related, but I'll bring it up. We've talked in the past, Matt, I'll mention you, about acquiring equipment to take advantage of this GIS technology. We've talked about using it in conjunction with inventorying storm drains and traffic signs and things like that. And Nate, I mean, if you're using this in your walkability audits, I think it might be a chance to revisit bringing that on, because it's so much easier to capture these things in ways where you can segment by layers of what you're looking at. And maybe the technology has come down in cost, but when we first looked at this 5 or more years ago, it was in the context of what's so expensive, maybe we should share the device with another municipality. And if it's gotten to the point of coming down, maybe we revisit bringing that on board here.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I don't know the history. I don't use GIS myself so much. I mean, I did back in the day a little bit, but I know that there are actually some quite good models that are out there that are not, you don't even have to pay. They're open source. QGIS is one of them. I think you're probably thinking of the licensing costs of ArcGIS. They can get pretty expensive, but I actually didn't know the town wasn't using it. So that comes a little bit as a surprise to me. So I think it's definitely worth considering because it's something we should be using in this day and age, in my opinion. So I can ask Anne-Marie about the system that she's using, the specific GIS software that she's used, and connect back to Matt if that helps.
Okay. Does anybody in the audience have any questions or want to add anything to Nate's report? Okay. All right. Now we give the council opportunities to talk about something that's not on the agenda. Darren, do you have any updates or anything you want to bring up?
No, I don't.
I just want to say how much I enjoy your speed camera on Howard Avenue, or the speed device. It's not a camera really, but I really like it. And actually, every time I've gone down, there's not a lot of speeding. I don't know. Have you gotten any data from it yet? Matt?
Yeah, Annie's capturing the data. She hasn't sent it over to me yet, but
Okay.
I know we had the battery went out last week and we had to change it, but
Yeah, she said it lasts about 10 days, I think.
Yeah.
So, okay.
And so, I mean, we talked about this several months ago, maybe May or June, about this device. And we were going to put it off until we got a better sense of the budget. And then our normal traffic black box that we've had for years died. And the cost to replace it was going to be more than the cost of this device, which collects essentially the same data. So we got the traffic data generator, plus we got this public messaging of here's what your speed is and here's what it should be. I think it's a good addition. If to the extent that people in town feel that speeding is a problem on their streets, it's a movable device, and I would welcome the opportunity to put it in other parts of town. Matt, I don't know if we have to get permission to chain it to a pole along state or county highways, but those are the roads that have the fastest traffic, and to the extent we can slow down metropolitan traffic coming into town, or possibly the holy grail of Connecticut Avenue, I'm all for it.
I think Metropolitan Avenue, we've kind of taken over that road. We seem to do whatever we want there. No, I do think it's good. I think the difference between that box and the one we had, or I guess the other previous box, is that people can actually see it. It's collecting data and it's showing you what the speed limit is. And the other box didn't show you, in real time. So when somebody thinks they're speeding, you look at it and you're like, oh my God, they're only going 17 miles an hour. They're not speeding. It just feels that way as you're standing there, or they are actually speeding. So I think it's a great thing to have in your toolbox. So, all right, is that it, Darren?
That's all.
Okay. Connor?
3 things real quick. One is just a quick thank you again to the staff for helping get together tables and cones for the KP 5th graders bake sale that was on Halloween morning. It was a huge success. Weather played a huge part of it, but a wonderful community also did. But it was also successful because the town crew helped me make use of some of the tables for the event so that we could keep COVID protocols in place. So thank you to them. Second,
I got the last 2 donuts, which helped us with the walk audits, I should say. So thank you, Connor.
Well, then I'm glad we bookended it because I had the first 2 donuts. The next, the Governor Hogan released the Maryland Economic Recovery Plan as part of his COVID packages. This is a package of $250 million geared at small businesses to help them with the impacts of COVID. in there, each county is being allocated a certain amount of money specific to restaurants and food providers, food generators. Montgomery County's portion of that is $8.5 million. So the county executive has just put out a grant program. They're going to be, he sent it up to President Katz of the county council. He's going to ask the county council to implement it. The intent of this program is to create a grant for restaurants that would allow them to apply for at a maximum $10,000 if they qualified. To qualify, they obviously have to be a business doing business primarily in Montgomery County. They have to be in good standing with the state. They cannot already be out of business. And then it can go towards things like working capital, such as rent, payroll, and jobs. It cannot go toward any use that the recipient has already received another county or state grant for, but it can go for other purchases of equipment or services to help with outdoor dining, with air quality upgrades for HVAC, technology for delivery, purchase of PPE, et cetera. So we're going to be tracking this. As soon as this is ready, we'll share it with our business community and help them be aware of it, learn how to apply for it, and try and get money for it. Additionally, another $5 million has gone into what was the Main Streets and Small Businesses grant. That grant is already closed. They already have they have more applications than they had money. So this money, the $5 million, is to help clear the backlog of applications. And I bring that up only because through working with our business community, I know that we have several businesses in the town that had applied in either phase 1, 2, or 3 of that grant program, but we're in a waiting period because the grant had run out of money. With this infusion of an additional $5 million, I am hopeful that our town businesses that applied to offset costs related to COVID, they'll see their grant applications approved and those reimbursements flow through to them. So Mayor Furman, I'll work with Tracy and with Carrie Ann Zentz to get that information out to our business community. And then lastly, Montgomery County Board of Education met last Friday to discuss their initial plans for reopening classrooms. And I bring it up in a timely way because they will have a meeting tomorrow night to take potential action on the plan. So for those who either have kids attending Montgomery County Public Schools or who are just interested, the tentative plan is to have MCPS start phasing in the return of in-person instruction beginning on January 12th, 2021. But that initial phase is specific to special education programs, specific career and technology education programs, those things that will help educators maintain licensure, and for other special needs populations. Following that first phase, the next phase would begin February 1st, and that would be for the larger general populations of students. All of this is both predicated by and dependent upon health metrics within the county. So they are tracking it. They have a PowerPoint presentation that's available on the county's website, and I will put that into the chat, where you can look at their presentation, and that presentation gives you an idea of what those health metrics are, where they need to be trending, what they need to be seeing in order to open this up. Additionally, they are going to start opening up the employee portal Wednesday. It's an employee health portal so that they can start working with their teachers and educators and paraeducators on tracking, the health metrics for the teaching population as well. So just an update on MCPS on their, attempts to get my kids back into class and my life back on track.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I just have a couple of things to bring to people's attention. I want to thank the Dog Run Committee for the very successful puppy parade that we held yesterday at the Dog Run. It was very well attended, and we had some super cute dogs and in costume, some not in costume, but everybody behaved, and people had a lot of fun, a lot of new faces at the dog park, so, which was great. I also want to, we've completed the Summit Avenue mural. Hope everybody gets an opportunity to go over there. MMC, our local cable station here at Town Hall, has put together a video. I sent a draft out to the council today. They'll finalize it, and then we'll post it on Wednesday, along with some shots that they also took at the puppy parade. So also Jason Swain has installed Mr. Greg at the Reinhardt Park, and he looks terrific. He is become a big hit with the kids. So he sits right behind the playground equipment, overlooking it with his axe. We are going to put a plaque on there so people know who he is, and that we are honoring his service and tree maintenance to the town for the many years that he served. So a plaque will be coming. Also, Clum Kennedy is not quite done. They did a wonderful job with the path, with the little boardwalk bridge, and but they're coming back to complete the and the pergola, and they're coming back to put a little curb on the bridge, take out some additional vegetation. We're trying to open it up the park, and then they're installing a bench around the fir tree. So it's gotten a lot of good comments about the improvements in Clum Kennedy. Also, I wanted to make sure I get everything. The town is partnering with the businesses. We're doing I found my holiday gifts in Kensington marketing. We're sending out postcards, doing social media postings. We'll have a banner and some other things promoting the town's businesses for holiday shopping. So I hope everyone comes and does their shopping and eating in Kensington. We have our bakery, Potomac Sweets. Connor and I went over there and got some treats and had an opportunity to meet with the owner, and we we took a few treats and then left the rest for the staff. But he'll be opening this Wednesday. Wednesday is his opening day, and it'll be a nice addition to the town. Also, Pink Dots is now open. They've expanded. It's a really cute shop, and so I hope people will take the opportunity to walk Howard Avenue and to really help support our businesses. And we'll be we've talked about this year's tree lighting. Very difficult decision, I think, unless the council has other feelings. I think this year we're going to just light the tree, and we'll going to ask Santa to make a special trip to our town streets and on that evening, and just go around to the streets and alert the kids of a schedule. I know he usually does that later in the season, but maybe on that day we can do it. I don't know of any other way of not having a gathering. I think that's really hard with little kids. So unless the council has other thoughts on it, I think that's probably what we're going to end up having to do with the tree lighting this year.
No, I don't have. I just want to support the decision, which is a hard one as somebody with little kids. But the tradition has been to come and share food and share drink and to sing, and those are all things that you can't do with masks on. Numbers aren't trending in the right way, and I think at this time, this is one of those proverbial tighten the belt kind of moments of, as much as I want to do it, it's just not the right time.
Yeah, and the county council is going to be voting tomorrow on the county executive's recommendation to take large gatherings from 50, outdoor large gatherings from 50 down to 25. So that certainly doesn't help, that cause. I do have a small group that's working on the menorah lighting. That has more ceremonial type opportunities. So they're going to come up with a plan and present it. There's 8 nights, I believe, total in the Hanukkah lighting. So they're looking at doing signups and just having small groups at each evening for the lighting. So, but no food, of course, and no singing. So they'll come back to me with their plan. And but I think that's the best, unfortunately, we're going to be able to do, I think, for the COVID year. I think as far as I know restaurants are probably going to be, if they lower the numbers for the gatherings, it's going to hit our restaurants again pretty hard. So lot be doing with the carryouts again. So I have to say, I tried to eat at Talia's the other night, and the place was everybody was social distance, but I would call it packed in COVID terms. It was just, he was pumping out as much food as he could quickly. So I was glad to see so many people were trying to get their meal last Saturday at Talia's. So anyway, I ended up at Continental, so I supported another business instead. Anyway, I think that's all I've got. So we will move on to from the town manager and staff. Matt?
Sure. A couple items I didn't have on the agenda. Medina's by Solaris Senior Living tower crane is supposed to come down November 20th. We'll be meeting with them later this week to coordinate that. Metropolitan Avenue will be closed temporarily. They're anticipating that it might take up to 3 days to remove the tower crane.
I think they're starting on a Friday evening?
Friday, November 20th. And their hope, weather permitting, is to have it complete by Monday morning.
Yeah.
So there will be, like I said, Metropolitan will be closed again. St. Paul will be used as a detour. So we'll just kind of get that out to the community, put some flyers out so everyone's aware of the traffic situation. The town clock at the train station is being rewired. You'll notice that it's stuck at 10:08. It might be a few more days. Once we get the electric panel back, it will be operating again. The brick crosswalk started going in this morning at Kensington Parkway. Last I checked, around 2:30 this afternoon, they were on the 3rd one. I'm not sure if they got the 4th one in yet. If not, they'll finish up tomorrow. And then just to remind everyone that leaf collection officially started today. I know the crew started last Thursday with the warmer weather, and we'll be running through December 11th, Friday, December 11th. And just a quick update, I know Councilmember Bartram passed along some salt and brine alternatives and some information for us to look into. I was hoping to meet with the state and the county either last week or today, and I haven't had a chance yet, but we're still looking into some alternatives. I'm not entirely sure if we'll be able to move away from rock salt this winter, but it's something that we're going to look into at least towards the end of the winter and definitely for next year. So.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not too dark, or if the kids, you can get into a safe place, it could be kind of fun watching them take that crane down. They actually lift it up over the building with a larger crane. So some little children may actually find that kind of exciting. So that would be an opportunity.
And no offense to Jeffy, but I think a crane dismantling is as exciting as a meteor shower.
At least you don't have to worry about clouds, maybe. Actually, one thing I forgot to bring up, I wanted to tell Nate, was that the crew did get up the new signs at Town Hall allowing for bikes. Those signs are now up. They did clear the area for the bike rack. Unfortunately, they have not put the concrete down, but they have getting it ready. So hopefully sometime during leaf season, they'll be able to get the concrete in and the rack up. So
Great. That's
before
great.
the end of the year.
All right, thanks for the update.
Yeah, so they're working on it. So we're a lot closer than we used to be. So anyway, okay. All right. Anything else, Matt, Susan?
That's it.
Okay. All right, we are ready for public appearances. Jack's waving his hand. Go ahead, Jack.
Excuse me, Jack Yaffe, Frederick Avenue. I'd just like to say about the salt, well, sort of two things. One, I understand I need to salt the roads. It's unfortunate that many times they also salt my garden, the grass and flowers along the edge of the street. And the rock salt, sodium chloride, is really bad for plants. There are other salts like magnesium sulfate called Epsom salts, which aren't. And, don't harm the plants.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you, Jack. Go ahead.
Next. I also wanted to comment. I think they've done a wonderful job with the improvements in Kennedy Gardens, the pergola and the pathways and everything.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really pleased with that. It's taken Greenscape and I quite a bit of time to get there. But one of a Frederick Avenue resident sent me an email just saying how pleased she is to seeing so many people using the park for multiple, reasons, for picnics and kids playing, and so
or even just to walk through to go to the Old Town Market.
To doing a walk. I mean, it's really nice. We added the sidewalk on Kensington Parkway, I think last year. So it just naturally just it forces you to come through the park, which is really, really great. So,
okay.
Thank you.
To respond to Darren's comment is yes, there will be a meteor shower next Monday, the night, the evening of Monday the 16th and the morning of Tuesday the 17th. The Leonid meteor shower. They're estimating about 15 meteors per hour. The crescent moon will set about an hour after sunset, so the viewing conditions will be ideal.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and lastly, on Monday, November 30th, there will be a full moon at 4:32 a.m. and there'll be a penumbral lunar eclipse where the moon passes through the Earth's penumbra, the outer shadow. It starts at 2 a.m. and it lasts for 4 hours and 21 minutes. And the peak of it, of course, is dead center in the middle.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, that's my announcements for tonight.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jack. Joe, you had your hand up next.
Thank you, Mayor Furman. Yes, indeed, Clem Kennedy is looking great. The brick pavers look wonderful. The pergola is at an appropriate height, and I like the little touches there with that little sort of bridge-like device there. I have to say I wasn't really keen on the idea of spending the money, but it is obviously money well spent, and so the work was done fairly quickly and well, and it looks great. And I also was very pleased to see the installation of the brick pavers on Kensington Parkway. I think Matt, they got the first 3 of them done heading south, and there's one more to do, but they are really going to be an enhancement to the pedestrian safety in the area, and really it's been a while since I've been calling for them, and I'm really glad to see them installed. It's a real plus. And then also Mayor Furman, kudos to the town staff for its fine start to the leaf collection. The south side of Kensington saw the truck today, and they, I must say, Frederick Place was really leaf strewn today before they came through, and they really cleaned it up really nicely, and very, very pleased to see the work there. So as I say, kudos to their fine efforts. Really very nice.
Well, thank you, Joe. And don't worry, you'll get more leaves, so they'll be through there. I'll be 2 or 4 times.
I'm sure we will, and I can't wait to see them again.
Well, and let me say kudos to you. I had a resident come up and said she saw you on, I think, Channel 4, one of the local news stations, talking about your book, and they were duly impressed that we had someone in town that was talking about an issue that was on everybody's minds regarding polling, I believe. So.
Yes, indeed. Polling failure in presidential elections. That's
Yep.
that's the latest book, and promoting the hell out of it as much as I can. I'm sorry,
Well,
promoting the heck out of it.
Good timing.
Yeah, since we had another polling surprise in this recent election.
You can write
Yes.
another book.
Yeah, write a new chapter.
There you
The book-
go. There
The
you
book, by the
go.
way, is titled "Lost in the Gallop." Just
Oh,
FYI.
okay. Well, very good. They were duly impressed. So.
Thank you, Mayor Furman.
Anyone else? Oh, Jeff, I'm sorry, you had your hand up. Jeff, were you in a fight or?
No, I even hesitated turning on my video. I didn't want to scare anybody.
Oh, that's all right.
Still Halloween. No, just cataract surgery. It
Oh,
happens
okay.
to people who, it's just a one-night thing. I just didn't want to pass up. I couldn't find the raise your hand earlier when
Oh, okay.
fast enough when you said, did you want to comment? And thank you, Nate and Darren, for your response. I've just made a suggestion, being a regular jogger along Summit Avenue, and that sidewalk every time scares the, what was the word, Joe? A heck, it scares the heck out of me. And it is dangerous. I was driving along just the other day, and two little tykes about 8 years old on their bikes on that sidewalk, and I just thought, what would it take? It would have been impossible for me to stop had one of them tripped. So my suggestion to the town, and I appreciated Darren's positive response, that we might look into this, is the possibility of using some of that land on the outside of the fence along the parkway there, because it is wide enough certainly to expand the sidewalk and make it much safer. And since it's all county land, I'm assuming, and there's going to be movement with HOC, we ought to take this opportunity, along with the developments that are occurring along there on Knowles, to see if we couldn't get some movement there. And I even think it might accommodate possibly a single bike lane. And since the master bike plan calls for connecting further down to Beach and Park Drive on an interim basis, because we know that's going to take a long time to build that on Knowles, the county has from time to time done designated residential streets as bike and car for bike and car traffic. It turns out that my walks and bikes along Westfield suggest that might be an appropriate street. I haven't chatted with the folks in Kensington Estates yet about what views they might have, but I will do that and see if there is any support or opposition to that designation, as well as checking to see how the county laid out the temporary detours once Capitol Crescent Trail went away, because those detours did go through residential areas. So just to say, I'll be back with Nate and the folks, and Darren and the folks involved with pedestrian traffic, pedestrian movement and biking, to get back to you with what I learned about that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks in advance for doing that, Jeff. And I just wanted to say that the question about the widening the sidewalk on Summit, whether it's widening it or having a grass buffer, I think that's something that we will definitely evaluate in our walkability audit process. And then just to clarify, the temporary residential throughway for the bike lane, right now it's planned to be done down Knowles Avenue. I think your suggestion is to talk with the Kensington Estates folks about Brookfield, right? Not Westfield.
Yeah, Brookfield.
Yeah.
Brookfield, yes, I'm sorry, my
Okay.
mistake.
I just wanted to confirm I read it right, but no, please
Yeah.
do get back to us, and again, encouraged by the.
Yeah, well, with the new Hawk lights there, that creates a nice transition across that street. And then, as I said, that street is as wide as Knowles is at that point.
It's very
almost.
wide. Yeah.
It's got traffic.
I wonder why they made that street so wide. It does seem a little odd.
But that's okay. Let's just make use of it if there's no strong objection on the part of the community to
Right.
Encouraging folks to bike there. As I said, I think it'll be a while before the Knowles portion of the bikeway master bike plan gets implemented.
Mm-hmm.
And this would make the connection very nicely. Make it possible for me to actually bike almost all the way into Kensington on my trips to Safeway, but there'll be a few other things too.
Well, maybe Connor could get to KP in 15 minutes on a bike. We'll see.
We'll see.
Challenge
Thank you.
accepted.
Okay.
Thank you very
All
much.
right. Thank you, Jeff. Anybody else? Not seeing hands, so I think we're good. Okay, let's move on to ordinance, resolutions, and regulations. Matt?
Sure, this is the town staff's favorite resolution every year. It's a resolution of the Mayor and Town Council of Kensington proclaiming November to be Municipal Government Works Month in the town of Kensington. This is for also MML credit, so we can carry the flag at the summer conference. So
And
this
I
just
saw the flag
helps
up.
promote- Yep.
Saw it up.
Okay.
So are there any questions? And I just need a motion.
Well, point of clarification. I mean, Nate knows he has to carry the flag, right? If he goes to the summer.
But the newest member has to.
I'm just
You
saying.
don't have to, Nate. You don't.
Probably be
We'll do it.
virtual.
They tried to get
for it.
me. They tried to con me into it 3 years ago, and they don't even give me the benefit of trying to roll it down to you. You guys really rolled over really quick on that.
It's like, I was gonna move to do that, but I don't want to. If that's the responsibility, I don't want to be on the record for openly embracing it. So maybe I'll have to second.
We're going to do it virtually. We'll do a virtual.
All right.
Okay, so did somebody make a motion? I'm sorry.
I'll move to adopt resolution number R13, 2020.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. Matt, you should be happy. We got this.
Okay, resolution number R-14-2020 is a resolution of the Mayor and Town Council of Kensington renewing a lease agreement with Montgomery Municipal Cable for the purpose of operating a PEG cable television channel on behalf of certain municipal governments in Montgomery County, Maryland, subject to certain terms and conditions. Montgomery Municipal Cable, as everyone's familiar with, is housed within the Town Hall. This would extend the existing lease agreement with them for another 10 years. Their current lease ends November 20th, so we need to proceed with a lease agreement if the council wishes.
Okay, any questions? Okay. I need a motion.
I move that we adopt resolution R-14-2020 to renew Montgomery Municipal Cable's lease with the town of Kensington.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. You want to stay for
Frozen.
another hour? It's only 9:06. Call it an evening? Is that what I'm hearing? Is there anything else that anybody wants to bring up before I ask for a motion to adjourn? No? Okay, could I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second it.
Okay, all those in favor?
Hi.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll see everybody on Monday, December 14th. Same place. Bye.
Good
Thank
night,
you.
everybody.
Good night.